Right, so the day finally arrived and we've got Warzone 2 live at the moment. It's about half an hour since it went live. And we are here to just bring you some performance numbers. So what I've got here is an RTX 3080 and a 12700K with 32 gigabytes of DDR4, 3600 megahertz of memory. Now, just one thing I have to admit that I am recording on the PC that I'm playing at the moment. My recording PC is a little bit under the weather. It's undergoing some repairs at the moment. So we'll just be testing the game at 1080p and 1440p, various graphical settings. So let's just go through them. I've got no idea where it actually is. This is my first time just logging into the game here. So I'll just go to graphics and you can see that we've got it at 1440p at the moment. And I think it's just the custom or the ultra preset. If we go to quality, it's the recommended preset, whatever that means. One thing that I did notice is that NVIDIA image scaling is enabled. We don't want that. Let's just put everything on off. We want to test at native rendering. NVIDIA image scaling is a software upscaler. So if you do have an RTX graphics card, then you should use DLSS. And if you've got an AMD graphics card, you should use FSR. Pretty strange that it's only FSR 1.0 in the game, not FSR 2. But anyway, let's see how it goes. This is the rest of the settings. High, long, high, on, near, whatever all that means. This is just recommended, and we'll play with the presets as we move along. We'll do a battle royale. There's no plunder yet, it seems. The only reason why I would prefer plunder is if you die, you can come back. I'm not the best at this game. Well, I wasn't the best at Warzone 1, so I believe my skill would be transferred across to Warzone 2. But let's see if we can survive long enough just to get some benchmark numbers. Just a reminder, guys, this is an online game, so treat everyone with respect. So what we've got there in the top left-hand corner is GPU temperature, usage, clock speed, memory clock speed, and power usage. Then we've got VRAM usage, CPU usage, RAM usage, frames per second, average frames per second, 1% lows and 0.1% lows. So the 1% lows would indicate some stuttering, and the 0.1% lows would indicate stuttering even a little bit more accurately. So for those of you who don't know what 1% and 0.1% low numbers mean, the 1% low number means that you will get that frames per second or more 99% of the time, and the 0.1% lows mean that you will get that or higher frames per second for 99.9% of the time. I've got no idea what this map looks like. We'll just are we just gonna drop somewhere, maybe around the middle? Maybe it's going to be pretty busy. Got no idea. Let's just see what happens when we get closer to the ground. Warzone 1 played at about double the frames here. And it's not because of the recording. The recording affects the frames per second by about 3 to 5%. So if you see this number, if we've got 100 frames per second average, you should get about 105 frames per second average without recording. All right, so this is at 1440p at the recommended settings. We've gone through that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to use some quality presets, move between them, and see how it affects the performance. As you saw, we got about 100 frames per second average in this area right here, wherever that is. Marshlands. So that's going to be our baseline, 100 frames per second. Right, we're going to try the extreme preset, and we'll reset the numbers here. And it seems we are sticking to about 100 frames per second, yeah. So maybe the recommended was set to extreme. That might make sense. I'm going to try and avoid gunfights, except for maybe one. There's definitely people here, a lot of people. I'm just gonna get out of here. Not because I'm scared, but just because I don't want to ruin my benchmark run. Alright, so still doing about 100 frames per second here. It does drop quite a bit when there's foliage, and I dropped as well. We at least got one kill, but there we go. So that's 1440p at extreme and 100 frames per second. I'm not sure if I'll be able to survive the gulag. I was never good at this. Where's my teammate? Right, well, it wasn't too bad for the first game. We didn't get a full benchmark running, but we'll just have to try again. Right, so these lobbies take forever to fill. Got no idea why, but I thought it would be a pretty popular game at launch. Anyway, we've been in the lobby for about 10 minutes now, and we have changed the graphical settings. Let me just show you here. We are now on Ultra, right? So we changed from Extreme to Ultra, and we are still getting around between 90 and 100 frames per second. So it doesn't seem like the graphical settings affect the FPS that much at these higher settings. Not entirely sure why. We are definitely not CPU bound. You can see that the GPU is constantly pegged at between 95 and 99%. So we are definitely GPU bound, not CPU bound. So changing the graphical settings should have a bigger effect on the performance, yeah. Right, so whilst we're waiting for the lobby to fill, I decided just to come back to our previous location, the marshlands, or close to the marshlands anyway, and just so we can continue with our benchmark run. Not sure when I'll be able to get into a game again to test, but we'll reset the numbers there. And as you can see, we are definitely still in the 90 range most of the time. The game feels quite okay. There's not a lot of stuttering going on. The 0.1% lows, they're sitting at 47 frames per second, and the 1% lows at 62. That's pretty good. But as you can see, we are at pretty much the same location as where we were previously, and we're still getting 100 frames per second, even though we are now a few graphical settings lower than what we were. But let's see what happens if we change it again. Right, so I'm going to change it to basic. All right, so now there we go. So now we've got a pretty decent bump in the frame rate. We are sitting at about 130, and the match is about to start in about a minute. I guess the game also got tired of waiting. So definitely changing to basic changes quite a lot of things. The game still looks pretty decent. It's not, I mean, there was quite a big stutter. If I spend some time looking around at stuff, I'd probably notice the difference. But this is a fast-paced shooter. You will change your settings probably to as low as you can, but still make it look semi-nice. I mean, you still want to enjoy what the developers have done here, but you also want a higher frame rate just for that competitive advantage. Alright, here we are back in the plane. I'm going to try and land here at the marshlands again. Hopefully not a lot of people jump here. There's like 23 people left in the plane. Maybe I'll go somewhere else where it's a little bit quieter just so that I can complete this benchmark run. Alright, so riding around in the buildings here, still getting 130, 140 frames per second, a big stutter there. I mean, this is a launch day, so expect some issues. But you can see that the GPU usage, even at the basic settings, we are still sitting at some 99% GPU usage. All right, so let's see what else is there. So that's basic, and now we're going to try minimum. Okay, this looks terrible. Not sure if... okay, I think I see what's happening. We got a very, very high frame rate, but the game looks like crap. I think it enables upscaling with the presets. Let's just check. I mean, it changes the render resolution. All right, so let's just check. Okay, so now we are back where we were with basic. So I think the difference here is if you go into graphic settings, let's just set it back to basic. So basic renders at 100%. Anti-aliasing is not changed. Everything else is low, normal, short, whatever. All right, so now if we then change basic to minimum, what else changes? I think it's just the resolution scale. That's not ideal. All right, so basic seems like the way to go. Let's try balanced. We haven't tried balanced yet. There's quite a lot of artifacting around my gun with this setting. Let's just see if something else was enabled here. Upscaling is disabled. I got no idea why it would look like that. The gun, just look there where my hand meets the gun. That just looks terrible. This is the latest NVIDIA driver that released today. So it's still there even in decent lighting. Let's just... No, it's still there. So if we change this one back, if we go back to basics, see what I did there. All right, so basic does not have that artifacting. I'll figure it out later, figure out what's causing that. So basically, I think basic is where you want to play this game. If you are playing on a 1440p monitor, we get decent frame rates. You get a high refresh rate experience, and if you've got a 144 hertz monitor, this would be ideal. I mean, let's just reset the numbers there because changing graphical settings affect the 1% and 0.1% lows as well as the averages. So let's just run around a little bit. We'll see how it goes. I know this is not indicative of real gameplay. I'm trying to avoid fights, but this should give you an idea of how the game would perform with similar hardware. It probably will go down a little bit when you get into gunfights if you are brave enough. I'm just not that type of guy. And I think that's what we're gonna leave it for 1440p. So I'm gonna change it to 1080p now. All right, so we're at 1080p, and let's start with the extreme preset again. All right, let's reset these numbers. I think it looks quite blurry. I'm not sure if it's just because it's 1080p on a 1440p monitor, or if upscaling is enabled. There's no upscaling, and resolution scale is at 100%. All right, so we got about 100 frames per second with 1440p, and now we're getting about between 120 and 140 frames per second. So pretty much the same as what we would get at 1440p basic. It's I mean, it's a pretty good experience. This, I was expecting maybe a little bit higher. I think if we do reduce the graphical settings, we will start running into a CPU bottleneck, but that is yet to be seen. Right, so just running around a little bit. I've got armor, but I can't apply it. I'm already full. Right, so we'll just run around a little bit. We've got, just to get the average there, the average seems to be about 128, and the lows are about half that, the 1%, the 0.1% lows. So not terrible. I haven't noticed any major stuttering now recently, so that's also good. All right, so let's see how fast we can actually get this game to run at 1080p. So we're going to go with the basic preset because the minimum preset changes the render resolution, right? So let's go to basic and see what we can do. All right, so we are still GPU bound, which is good. We are getting 160, 170 frames per second. I must say that the game feels extremely responsive at this frame rate. There's definitely a noticeable reduction in input latency. I know that going from 130 to 160 frames per second is only like 1 millisecond per frame time, or actually 0.5 millisecond on the frame time. So you're not really supposed to notice it that much, but somehow it does feel a lot more responsive playing at this frame rate. All right, lastly, I'm just going to go to 1440p and enable DLSS. The DLSS numbers, you can use 1080p for reference if you play at 1440p, because DLSS quality at 1440p upscales from 1080p to 1440p. All right, so we are going with the extreme preset at 1440p, and we will enable a DLSS. Let's just show more, and we'll go with the quality preset. Quality, as I said, upscales from 1080p to 1440p. the sharpness might be a little bit high, you can adjust it. Yes, if the image looks too sharp, you can just lower it with the slider. Right, so we are getting about 120 frames per second. Just to be clear, I personally wouldn't use the DLSS in a competitive shooter. I would rather just lower the graphical settings if you want to get to that magical 144 frames per second. So that's just to give you an idea, and that DLSS does work in this game. There's not a lot of ghosting going on. I was expecting more. I mean, you can use DLSS if you want to increase your performance and still stay at 1440p. But I would rather just, as I mentioned, switch it to a lower preset. Most of the time in this game, you are running around looking for enemies, trying to survive. So you don't have a lot of time looking at what the game has to offer graphically, that is. So anything that you can do to increase your frame rate but still keep it at native would be a good thing for a competitive shooter. All right, so that's it for this video. I actually want to do a comparison video between Warzone 1 performance and Warzone 2 performance using the exact same system, but time is a little bit short. I'll get to that video and hopefully get it uploaded about next week. But that's it for our 1080p and 1440p results using an RTX 3080. As you noticed there was another stutter. So the game is definitely not perfect, but I'm guessing it should probably be resolved in a few days, weeks, months. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and as always, we hope to see you in the next one.